Okay, class, when you think of a pop star, what's the first thing to come to mind? Nikki tanks, table flopped, ponytail trapped in Oz, Dua needs to be sent back to the Kia asylum. You're literally a boy.
Well, no. You see how nobody mentioned a male pop star, though?
Those exist?
Do they?
Oh my god, Nadi's on Stan Twitter.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're talking about something that I feel like isn't talked about really at all. Today we're talking about male pop stars, and specifically who they are, where they're at, and why it seems that we as a society have walked away from men in pop. Now, this video topic was inspired by a TikTok that I saw in which the creator was discussing a discourse that was going on about why male pop stars haven't really popped off in the same way that female pop stars are, and whether or not the quality of music between male and female pop stars is equivalent. And we're going to touch a little bit on that, but I really wanted to frame this conversation more so around the question of why we're not seeing more of a male pop star presence, as well as breaking into the double standards that exist for female pop stars and the things that they have to go through that, for better or worse, male pop stars and male pop acts / musicians just don't have to go through, or at least not to the same extreme. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, sit back, grab a snack or a meal, because let's be real, this is probably your enrichment time while you're eating something because you don't want to be alone with your thoughts. And that's okay, because me too, girl. As I was alluding to in the little skit in the beginning, we as avid music consumers in the modern day have gotten really used to the pop girly. The quintessential pop star that makes pop music, has the whole brand image of a pop star, and just gives this air of artistry and also that we know and enjoy. When we think of pop stars, we think of people like Ariana Grande, we think of the Taylor Swifts, we think of Beyonce, Sabrina Carpenters, and all of these artists are complete chart toppers, make great music, and are able to inspire the masses. But one question that does come up from this are, where are the pop boys in this? And to first try to answer this, I think that it's important to get a definition of what exactly a pop star is. According to Google.com, a pop star is defined as a famous and successful singer or performer of pop music. Did that eat? Huh? I ate that? No? Okay, cool. So basically meaning that pop star is a pretty broad term. Any famous singer or performer that's making pop music can be considered a pop star. It's just that over the recent years, male pop stars have not necessarily been driving forces in the culture of pop music. I'd argue that for at least the past 5 years, in general music landscape has primarily been led by women and female artists, which I personally think is a great thing because that just has not been the case for so long in the music industry, with pop music being more popular than ever, and with the rise in popularity of female rappers, country artists, and more, we definitely see more of a shift. And I think that this really has less to do with the artists themselves and more so to do with the audiences and what the general public is looking for. Because sure, you can be really talented at making music, you can be a really talented performer, but if no one's really listening or caring to watch, you're not going to be mainstream, you're not going to be topping the charts. So when it comes to the question of why we're not seeing as much of a push, or we're not seeing as many really popular male pop stars as maybe we used to in years past, I wonder if it has more to do with male pop stars really not resonating as much with general pop music listeners as they used to. And this isn't to say that there aren't any male pop acts doing well for themselves right now, because we're gonna get into a list of those very soon. But looking at popularity, looking at stand-up, and just looking at general heavy hitters of the culture of music and of pop music, right now, most of those, if not all of those heavy hitters, are not male artists. And that's okay. Like in the days of pop past, you had icons and heavy hitters like Prince, Michael Jackson, Elton John, groups like NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, really being heavy forces in pop. And slightly more recently, you had male pop acts like Justin Bieber during his heyday, groups like One Direction, and more, which are really prominent figures in pop music that just are either not releasing music to the same cadence as they used to, or have the same fan bases that are as invested or as interested as they used to be. And I think that there are many reasons for why that is, but one of them that I think is especially interesting and relevant for today's day and age is that I feel like a lot of male pop stars aren't necessarily able to keep up with what the pop girlies are doing. There's a certain standard and expectation that pop girls are held to that encompasses their music, their performances, their personal lives, the way they interact with fans, the way that they look, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Like, I feel like in order to be a pop girl nowadays, you need to be able to give up so much of yourself while also sharing so much of yourself with the world at large, and to open yourself up to everybody's criticism, vitriolic remarks, and judgments, as well as be able to handle all that with a smile and then give it performance. Like, that is a crazy expectation that people have for the pop girls. That isn't fair at all and should not be the case. And many of the pop girls have come out to like speak about how effed up that is. I know I keep bringing her up in every video, but Chapel Roan, I feel like she's really leading like the modern force in this, of like establishing boundaries and like what is right and acceptable for like a celebrity fan interaction. And I feel like for a lot of male pop acts and for male artists in general, those things don't necessarily apply in the same way, and they don't have to go through the same things at that scale, which I think sounds kind of crazy to say, but may be to these male acts' detriment. I think the way that we engage and interact with pop stars nowadays borders on, if not is completely based on obsession. Like, people are obsessed with their faves and want to know every little thing about their favorite pop star, their favorite celebrity, wanting to know everything, wanting to know the intricacies of their personal lives, their dating lives, every second of everything that they create in the studio, whether that be something that's finished or not, which we've seen in the numerous amounts of leaked tracks and leaked music from artists, what they eat in the day, how they get their skin to look like that, their outfits, everything. Like, there is a level of obsession with female pop artists right now that is very unhealthy, and I want to call that out. That unfortunately also is just like part of the pop star formula to establish that parasocial relationship and to have that mainstream success, investment in the music and who they are as stars that isn't necessarily held to the same standard for modern male pop stars. Like, I feel like the old pop boys dealt with this a lot too. Like, I remember reading a lot about and seeing documentaries about like the absolute mania and obsession that went down around the Michael Jacksons, the Princes, the Beatles even, and their fans and levels of obsession that they had. That isn't necessarily true or equivalent for the modern male pop star. There's actually this really interesting quote from a feature in Tastemakers magazine, also talking about where the male pop stars are, in which the author states that if the reason that female singers have dominated pop music recently is simply because male artists haven't caught on or refused to sacrifice more of their privacy, then it is nothing to celebrate. And I think that line really stood out to me because I'd been having trouble really putting my finger on what the differentiating factor was between why male pop acts and female pop acts feel so different outside of like inherent misogyny in the way that the world views and treats women. And I think that male pop acts nowadays are often able to and afforded the luxury to distance themselves, remain mysterious, and maintain more privacy over their personal lives, their bodies, and their romantic relationships without as much pushback than what female pop acts are able to. To be a pop girl in the modern day, it seems like it is to open every aspect of your life up to criticism, to be looked into and obsessed over. And it feels like society sees female pop acts as almost expected, as almost required to shed a sense of privacy in order to be liked and obsessed over and to really garner that standum around in a way that a lot of male pop acts never really need to. And of course, this isn't a one-size-fits-all case. Like, there definitely are some pop girls that are able to maintain more of a sense of privacy than others. And there also are pop boys that give away a lot more of their privacy than others. And I really think that the theme here is that regardless of where these double standards may lie, they're not really helpful to either party.
I just think we need to be more mindful about how we talk about and treat both the pop boys and pop girls in relation to the double standard that affects them both. Because I feel like if we don't, we're just going to see more negative outcomes. And not to get off topic, but I feel like in my personal life, I've been trying to be more mindful to have positive outcomes, specifically when it comes to the consumption of clothing, which is why I've been loving this video sponsor, Bombas. Bombas makes the number 1, 2, and 3 most requested clothing items in homeless shelters, socks, underwear, and t-shirts, and donates an item for every purchase that you make. I don't know if you know this, if you've been tapped into the Imurgency cinematic universe. I actually can't shut up about it. I am going to be running a half marathon in a month, and I've been training for it for the past 3 months. And I've gradually been getting more running gear to help me prepare for that. And luckily for me, Bombas has socks that are made specifically for running. And I've been wearing them and bringing them along with me on runs. And they honestly feel amazing on my feet. They keep my feet from getting too gnarly. They also carry a bunch of other products that are not running related, from socks, slides, underwear, t-shirts, and more, that not only make you feel good, but do good as well. They've already donated over 100 million items to shelters. So this is truly a purpose-driven brand that I'm so excited to be working with for this video. So you can feel good and do good with Bombas, knowing that your purchase is doing some real good. If you're interested, new customers get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/emergency and use code emergency at checkout. Thank you so much, Bombas, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into talking about the pop boys and the pop girls.
Now, with all that said, let's take a little scavenger hunt and find out where these male pop stars actually are. We're gonna find out where the pop boys are at and who they are. And I think to do this, it would be cool and interesting to break down the difference between like the queer pop boys and the straight pop boys, just because I feel like the experiences, the music, and the reception of these two groups is so different. So yeah, we're gonna do that. And we're gonna start with the gay boys. First off, you know who this twink is? You know him? Of course you do. This is Troye Sivan. Troye Sivan is one of those cases where you have someone that definitely gives pop star, but isn't really brought up in the pop star conversation, which I feel like is very sad. Mostly because he has all of the qualities of an amazing pop star. He has the music, he has the performances, he has the choreo and the it factor to make him a great pop star. Basically giving us everything that we have been asking for in a male pop act, or just a male act in general, like giving us something more than just walking around stage saying their lyrics over a backing track. Like, he is giving us a performance in a way that is very similar to the pop girls. And while he had a huge moment last year with the release of his album Something to Give Each Other, featuring popular songs like Rush, One of Your Girls, and Got Me Started, he still hasn't really cracked into that really mainstream, if that makes sense. I don't know if too many people would refer to him as a main pop boy, but that essentially is what he is. And I personally can't wait to see him and Charlie XX perform on their Sweat tour. I actually don't have tickets to their LA show as of right now. I'm just manifesting. But Troye makes a lot of great music about his life, but also talking about the queer experience and just the general experience of falling in love. With some songs like What's the Time Where You Are, discussing what it's like to have a temporary fleeting love, talking about what it's like to have a semi-short term, long distance relationship with someone that you could potentially see a future with, or at least want to hunch on, but they are physically just too far away from you, whether that be a different state, city, or country, which I think is a canon event for every gay person. To songs like One of Your Girls, detailing what it's like to be a queer person that has a crush on a straight man. I feel like Troye used to be really open and personal, or more so open and personal, about his life outside of music back when he was a YouTuber. In case you didn't know that, he did get his start on YouTube. For those of you that are OGs on YouTube, he was part of, I think he was part of O2L, right? Okay, I'm looking here, maybe he wasn't a part of O2L, but he was definitely running in those same circles. He was in the early YouTube days of like Tyler Oakley, Ricky Dillon, JC Kalen, Kian and JC, all of that. Like, back in that heyday was when he was logged in. And like any good YouTuber of that time, oversharing was definitely the norm. But as Troye has fully transitioned into being a celebrity and artist, I feel like he's created more privacy and more of a distance between him and his audience, which is just something to know. But yeah, the gay pop boys have Troye Sivan. They also have the Lil Nas X. I think when you think of a modern gay pop star, Lil Nas X is one of the first names that come to mind. He is an example of someone that hopped on the scene and really changed the scene once he hopped on it. He's kind of been in his rebranding era as of recently, because I think he had to go back to the drawing board a bit after he released J. Christ and got all the pushback from that, because he seems to be teasing and coming out with a new era in project under the name Dream Boy. I'm excited to see what comes out of that, because I think that Lil Nas is really great under a concept and really great at rebranding and starting new eras, which is something that we're going to tie back around and talk about in just a second. But a lot of his music is both fun and also is very real, talking a lot about his personal life, his upbringing, and also the realities of being a Black queer person, both in the public eye and as well as in the private eye, growing up in an environment where gay is not okay. But getting back to the conversation about eras, because I think this is something that's really relevant to the conversation about what's different about the pop boys and the pop girls. Lil Nas is really great at giving an era, which is something that is absolutely expected of pop girls. Like, every time they release a new album or release a new project, it is expected that they have a completely different era. It is expected that they've changed their aesthetics. They either change the way they look, they enter you into a new world, a new universe, essentially having to reinvent themselves every single year to give their audience something new to talk about and to consume. And if they do not do that, pop girls are often faced with immense criticism, talking about how the project or era may be lazy. There's career stagnation, the music isn't any different, and in come the flop allegations, which I think is so insane. It's been talked about before, this is not a new conversation, but I do want to reiterate that it is just so wild that we have this expectation of pop girls. Like, I remember, like, it shouldn't be the case that every new project needs something completely different, in fear of getting this artist has no music or artist development allegations, because for so many male acts, not even specifically male pop acts, male artists are able to get away with doing so little, like literally having the same aesthetic, the same era, and having the same sounding music for decades at a time, and no one says anything. No one even bats an eye. There are so many male artists that have entire discographies worth of work that sound so similar that you can pick and choose something from their first album and put it on their 10th album and have it fit just as cohesively. Like, it is a completely unfair standard that is held for pop girls. Like, I remember when Olivia Rodrigo announced Guts and released the cover art for Guts, and people were saying like, oh my god, this is so similar to Sour, just because she used a similar color purple. She didn't change the colors around for her new era, and for the entirety of that rollout and for the legacy of that album, people were like, oh my god, it just feels like Sour Part 2. Even though the music is very different, there is a clear development of her as an artist, and because the colors and the graphics are kind of the same, that's just going to be its legacy. But I say all that to say that Lil Nas is one of the male artists that really does change an era, give an era. Like, every single one of his projects is so distinctly different from the previous. Like, from his Old Town Road era to his EP to his debut album Montero to the mini projects in between that where he was kind of experimenting with his sound and different aesthetics, to now where he's going into this whole futuristic Dream Boy era aesthetic, he's also giving us some of the aspects that people love about the pop girls. Also in the gay pop boy conversation is Omar Apollo. Now, Omar Apollo has been having a lot of controversy recently because of his God Said No tour, which I think is a different aspect of this conversation about the demand for a pop boy.
So next week, Omar Apollo is set to go on his headlining tour. Ticket sales is not looking too hot so far. Only 42% of tickets been sold. It's deemed one of the worst selling tours so far. His home state, Indiana, has sold less than 30%.
Essentially, Omar is struggling to sell out his theater tour. Despite having impressive streaming numbers, the actual turnout for people that are willing to go out and buy a ticket and support Omar in person just are not equivalent, which have caused him to receive some flop allegations. And I think that there are multiple things at play here for why this tour isn't selling out necessarily. I don't think that it's solely because he's a pop boy and pop boys aren't necessarily super popular or as popular as pop girls right now. I do also think that his management may be overestimated the amount of people that would be willing to buy a ticket into a single show, with literally every artist going on tour right now, the economy being as tight as it is, etc., but it's still not a good look. Also, when it comes to Omar's tour, there have been criticism over his choreography segment, saying that he looks a little stiff. And in the grand zeitgeist of pop stardom, I think this is such a great case study in keeping the same energy, because I'm not shocked at this. I'm actually kind of happy. Sorry to Omar, because I'm sure like being told that you look stiff after you've been practicing choreo for, I'm sure, like months may not feel the best, but I am happy that we're finally keeping the same energy that we do for the pop girls, for the pop boys, because I think we're failing to remember that we being like society and like pop music consumers and just music consumers, we routinely bully female artists so much into improving their performances. Like, this shouldn't be a drag. Like, think Dua Lipa. The internet bullied her into learning how to dance. Like, think Ice Spice, where the internet's been bullying her into giving more stage presence. Chloe Bailey having people bully her into toning down the sexual undertones, or in some cases overtones of her performances. Sing it louder. Like, I think we've gotten so used to the way that we talk about the pop girlies that we don't acknowledge how crazy as a whole we sound. So when it's done to a pop boy, people are like, oh my God, people are being so mean to Omar. Like, yes, and it seems like that same level of empathy and just like, oh my God, we should be nicer to Omar does not apply to female artists. So if you're gonna keep that energy for one, keep it for all, or switch or change it for everybody. And I just generally think that these criticisms are very real and could also delve into a deeper conversation over whether bullying your faves into improving is a inherently good or a bad thing. But that might be a conversation for another video. Other queer pop boys include Conan Gray, and I know that Sam Smith identifies as non-binary. So in Sam Smith's case, they are essentially like an OG queer pop star. Like, they've been in the game for a while. But then we have these straight male pop stars. And these ones I feel are more so the mainstream male pop stars. They're the ones that the general public generally knows and loves and are seemingly more popular, which is a conversation that we might dig into in this video. It might be for another video depending on how long this video is getting. But you'll understand once I start going down the list. The first one is The Weeknd. Now, this one should shock no one. The Weeknd, literally up until like a month ago, was the most streamed artist in the world. Up until Billie Eilish took that crown from him, which I feel like also is kind of fitting for this video. But The Weeknd for over a decade has been the arguable king of pop and R&B right now. Like, post Michael Jackson and post like Usher's heyday, The Weeknd is an incredibly successful male pop artist. His stuff always does numbers, and when he releases new music, it always makes waves. He's also an artist that dips into the pop girl playbook in having many different eras. Like, every single album of his has a very distinct era. And as of filming this video, he just announced a brand new album with a brand new era. But I think that he said that this is gonna be his last album, or maybe the last album as The Weeknd, I don't know. But The Weeknd has definitely been front and center as a pop boy for sure. Then you also have Harry Styles. Now, Harry Styles has been on a hiatus for a while, but if you remember when he was in his active era back in 2021 to like 2023, he was a main pop boy. You could not go anywhere. Like, his tour, I feel like he is like the male equivalent to Taylor Swift. Maybe not like 2024 Taylor Swift, but maybe like 2022, 2023, because I think that they, one, share an audience, and two, he's very palatable and very marketable. Like, he's regarded as one of the big main male pop stars. It was impossible not to see clips of his tour when he was touring. And though he's been out of the game for a minute now, I know that he's coming out with a new project soon, but he can definitely be seen as a main male pop act. And these last two that I'm gonna mention kind of vary, are kind of teeter-tottering in the category. Number one is BTS. Like, we need to mention a boy band because I feel like boy bands are like the OG male pop star funnels, and this is BTS. I think BTS is currently on hiatus because I think some of them are in the military right now. They're a little different because they're international artists. They are a K-pop group, but I think that they are the closest thing to what the pop girls are giving, because I think that a lot of really popular K-pop studies from the pop girlies and the success of American pop stars implement a lot of the same things that are successful for the pop girls into these pop boy groups, with the choreo, with selectively sharing personal lives, creating these idols for people to obsess over and galvanize behind. Then we have someone like Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars is an OG. Bruno Mars is honestly an OG pop boy. He started off with pop. He was 100% a main pop boy whose discography is honestly untouchable, like second to none. He's made some career pivots though. I don't think that he's solely pop anymore. He did lean more into R&B and funk for a little bit, also moving into soul for like with his group with Anderson for Silk Sonic, but has recently come back to pop in his new song with Madame Google. You know the song. I also think that Bruno Mars just can't make bad music. I don't think that he's able to. Like, I think that he'd actually combust if he had attempted to. Like, I don't know, that man just knows how to make a banger. And going back to the whole thing of him like switching genres, the Tastemakers magazine actually has a really great point on the concept of male acts switching genres and moving out of pop to find more success out of their music than just traditional pop. The article states that it seems apparent where male pop stars could have gone other genres. Country and R&B remain firmly entrenched in listeners' preferences, and in those respective fields, male singers dominate. Bruno Mars provides a helpful example of his trajectory. He started off as a mainstream pop act, but has tested new musical sounds and evolved over time, moving away from a pop beginning. Yada 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 yada. So from this short list, it seems like the male pop stars, in order to see success and to be considered like a great pop star, a lot of the really successful ones seem to bite off the strategy of the pop girls and what the pop girls are doing to remain successful and remain relevant, like giving different eras, being more personable. And if not that, the pop boys just seem to be moving out of pop. But still, out of all these examples, I don't think many of any of these pop boys necessarily give up as much of their personality and open themselves up to as much criticism as the female pop acts do. Like, female pop stars have to be excellent to do well in the industry. They need to make great music. They need to have the best bodies. They always need to look, sound, and act their best, and aren't afforded the same luxuries and given the benefit of the doubt as much as male artists. Like, traditionally, male artists can get away with not doing as much, with having them doing the most seen as a plus, not something that's required. I do think there is something to be said though about the difference between the gay pop boys versus the straight pop boys. I feel like the gay pop boys are sort of put in limbo in a sense, where they're kind of in an in-between. They get some of the privileges of not having to do as much as the pop girls that their straight male counterparts are able to enjoy, but I think definitely need to work harder and give us more than what their straight counterparts do, because their audiences are also looking for that from them. Like, I think that straight male pop artists, like, they're more widely appealing to every demographic. Like, you're having straight men listening to your music, gay men listening to your music, straight women, queer women, and have more general public appeal. But when it comes to queer male artists, a lot of the core fan base of queer male artists are the same people that are the core fan base of these pop girls, that being mostly the girls and the gays. So there is sort of an expectation there to give the audience what they're used to and what they've been looking for and expect out of the pop girls in their own music, in their own format, which I think is why we see such innovative work and innovative performances coming out of the queer male pop space more authentically. But I feel like because, and this might be controversial, feel free to disagree with me in the comments, I feel like that also is part of why we haven't seen super mainstream success for the queer pop boys outside of Lil Nas X, really, because they're not seen as widely palatable to mainstream audiences, as say the pop girls or the straight male pop stars. I feel like there's a little bit more of an uphill battle there. Not impossible though, because you have people like Lil Nas X doing it time and time again, but definitely a different challenge there. But yeah, where are the pop boys? They're either in other genres or they're just doing their thing, not on the same scale as some of the main pop girls. That's gonna be it for this video. I just wanted to share those thoughts that I was having. Shout out to the OG creator of that TikTok that inspired all of this. Now I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you agree and see the double standard between the pop girls and the pop boys? Do you want to see more mainstream success for the modern pop boys, or are you good with how it is right now? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and follow me on my socials at Imurgency if you are new. Don't forget to hit up bombas.com/emergency to get 20% off your first purchase by using code Imurgency. And other than that, y'all, I've been Imurgency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.